Welcome to the Lost Traveler Peregrine DadCast. We are here weekly. I am your host, Henry Cameron Allen, and I am here with our regulars, Jeff Kamen, Dave Roberts. We have a new Peregrine with us, Mark Satterthwaite. Welcome, brother.
Thank you.
And joining us right now, who's had a little bit of technical difficulty, is our brother John Garvin, who's also a regular. So I'm just so glad to have all of you together here today. This is a hard time of year. This is the countdown, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Every year, and for me, it's been 15. Um, every year, it feels like New Year's Eve as the ball is dropping, as the countdown is happening. It feels to me like it's the countdown to another year without my son Cameron by my side. Now, after 15 years, what I feel very strongly is that he's very much alive inside here, inside my heart. We are still a partnership. He no longer has cancer. You know, I try to look at the silver linings. I try to look for the gifts and the grace in the transcendence that we call death from one frequency of existence into another. And so that's a bit of grace that I try to carry from one year into the next. And after 15 years, it's become secondhand. It's become second nature to me. We all have a unique journey. I want to introduce each of you and to share, if you will, your story of how you got here as a peregrine and where you are now in terms of your perspective on meeting a new year with the information and with the biography that you carry. Mark, do you want to go first since you're our newest group member?
Sure. Yeah. So just to sort of introduce myself a little bit and then share how I got
Introduce
here.
yourself, tell your story, where you are in the country and the world, and where you are in your journey.
Sure. My name's Mark Satterthwaite, and I'm 59 years old, located in Plainfield, Indiana. It's a suburb of Indianapolis. Um, I've lived here for, gosh, I don't know, about 30, 40 years. Moved down here for my first job a long time ago. I currently I'm a program director in IT. I work for IU Health. It's the largest health system in the state. And married and have one surviving son. And then the son that we lost, his name was Kyle. He was 30 years at the time. It was about 3.5 years ago. And he sort of coincidentally, I'm not sure if it's ironic, but coincidentally, he 5 years prior to that had a motorcycle accident. Was treated at one of the hospitals in the hospital system that I work at. I wasn't employed there at the time. And part of his recovery was pain management because he had some road rash on as a result of the motorcycle accident. And at the time, I think they're getting better, but at the time they were pretty loose in terms of giving patients addictive pain medicine. I've since then I had a little procedure done, and they were, hey, here's a prescription for a bottle of whatever it was, and they didn't really tell me any of the. I mean, it was printed on there, but they didn't really tell me verbally, hey, you need to be careful about taking this medicine because it's addictive. So anyway, he got addicted to that, and then once the prescriptions went away, he turned to other things, including ended up being heroin. and then fentanyl. Um, and it was during COVID, so we were, locked down here. The house I was working 100% remote, and just ended up being kind of, middle of the day. We hadn't heard from him. So we went down to see what was going on, and his mom found him laying on the floor in his bedroom. And so we've luckily she and I have his mom and I have been pretty aligned on we were during his whole addiction, and we thankfully have been pretty in sync and aligned in the time after his passing, and pretty supportive of each other. And I think it'd be probably be more difficult if we either didn't agree on things or going through it alone. I think it would be challenging, but so it's been, I've been sort of in and out of the different stages, or whatever you call them, of grief. First year was pretty hard. Second year was pretty hard. The third year, it's been sort of strange. It's been more, I've identified more with the term the lost traveler this year. I've been sort of less directional, I guess. I've had a lot more, I don't really care about anything.
Right.
So I'm kind of, I don't know if that's a stage or not, but I just really don't care about anything.
Yeah, no, it's very normal. It's very common. And it's not going to be the same stages at the same times for everybody. There's no predictability here. And that's, one of the reasons we're doing this is to actually show that we may find common threads on our grief journey, but everyone's going to have a unique story. There are going to be similarities from one to the other, but we've all been at one stage or another. And those of us that are very veteran peregrines that have been, like Jeff and myself, 15 years and Dave, 20 plus years, we can look back now in hindsight and we can say, oh yeah, I remember when I was there, right? And we can be here to share our biographies and our stories and hopefully just sort of walk with you through this and reassure you that it's not going to be easy ever, but it does get easier. And it helps to have community of people who get it, of people who understand that this is a journey of endurance. This is a journey of survival, right? And that's going to be forever. And so there are tools that we can find together and share together that hopefully can help you through this phase that you're in right now.
Good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jeff Kamen. I'm 80 years old. I lost my son, Nathan, who was an astonishing human being until alcohol bit him and slowly destroyed him until he hit age 41 and followed his shot glass up a 19-story balcony in Chicago to his death. I want to take issue with Henry on one thing. He says it never gets easy. That perhaps his experience is his. My experience is different. In the last couple of years, I've been fully liberated from the ongoing clinging sense of doom and horror over the loss of Nathan. Instead, what's happened is he's dropped in and said, hey, let's go to the gym. Is that what you're eating today? Really? Are you kidding me? And then he'll disappear on me. And it's not insanity. It's sanity with the greatest calming, loving clarity. I want you to know that from my own experience, it not only gets easier, it gets easy and you get joyful. Now, remember, please, as I said to you at the beginning of my little declaration here, it's been almost 16 years for me.
Right.
So all these things take time. If this is a new experience for you, if thinking about or discussing your recent loss, or even a loss years ago that you never fully dealt with, take this in deeply. It gets better. Your only mission here is letting yourself survive, supporting that, and watch what happens. like some flower that's been hammered by awful weather, and then the weather changes, and gradually you find yourself blooming again. So, and it doesn't matter what your religious background is, or if you have none. The universe is actually conspiring to lift you up after it's crushed you. Believe me. My existence, my joyful life proves that it's true. Back to you, Henry.
Beautiful. I could have said it better. And you're right. It's individual. I think that a lot of what we believe, what we put our questions in, our faith in, that's going to inform our journey. And there are going to be people who, like you say a lot, Jeff, is that we are not, as human beings, hardwired to outlive our children. We're just
No.
But we are hardwired to
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We are hardwired to survive. And that's the impulse. And that's, I think, when we are in a position where the world has been just sort of decimated around us, and people with all kindness and best intention will say, "Oh, do you have any other kids?" As if that fixes your problem. Like you shift your love to your other child, right?
However, Henry, my circumstance was also different.
Right.
That marriage, the first marriage after 18 years, was literally shredded finally and destroyed by the impact of his addictions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got to be level with you. It just destroyed it. A second marriage, which lasted almost 30 years. I'm a strong believer in marriage. I'm in my third and final one right now. Almost 30 years. It was during that time that Nathan left the body in that horrible, dramatic way. But by then, he already had 2 new little baby half-sisters. So my life has been so enriched by marriage, by births. I now have Nathan's younger sister and his 2 half-sisters who dramatically fill my life with love and challenge and gratitude. So I took a hell of a beating, but then I got lifted up and surrounded in love. Not everybody gets that kind of break.
Right.
And I know it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I out of the 4 of us here, and John is also, I think his son was his only child. I can't speak to the experience of a Peregrine that has multiple kids and the gifts and the challenges that brings. Like I said, everyone's individual, and I can't imagine having your child there reasonably healthy one day, gone the next. I had 2 years to sit with Cameron and watch him expire at age 13, right at the threshold of his young manhood, right? And so to have lost an adult child is an experience I can't relate to. I can empathize with outliving your child, but I can't begin to comprehend what it means to outlive an adult child after they've had the struggles and the joys of the life that they had. So my heart goes out to both of you. And Dave, Dave and I are sort of similar in that, the way that our children left and the process, and Janine was older than Cameron was, but go ahead and tell your story a little bit, Dave, and share.
Well, first of all, Mark, it's great meeting you. I always say in support groups that I facilitate, I'm glad you found us, but I'm sorry for the reason why you found us, but I'm glad you found us. And for me, my life was progressing on a fairly predictable linear path until May of 2002, when my daughter Janine was diagnosed with the velar rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a rare and aggressive and incurable connective muscle tissue cancer. She was diagnosed about a little bit over 3 weeks after giving birth to her only child and my first grandchild, Brianna, who is now 22 and has a child of her own, which another girl. So it's kind of like the cycle of life at this stage in my life is it's come full circle. But for me, I was an addictions counselor. I had just gotten my master's degree in social work, and Janine transitioned from the physical plane to the spiritual one 10 months after being diagnosed. Cancer, the pregnancy pretty much masked any differential diagnosis of the cancer. And, we didn't blame anybody. It's just the way it was. She had a swollen foot early on in her pregnancy, and we all thought the swollen foot was a complication of the pregnancy, just a normal complication, but it turned out to be a 8 centimeter malignant tumor in the bottom of her foot that just had metastasized. She transitioned at home with hospice services on March 1st, 2003. All the training in the world that I had, all the experience I had as a therapist didn't even remotely prepare me for the road I was about to walk. I was 47 years old and I was learning how to walk all over again. The world was very unpredictable, it was very terrifying, it was very uncertain. But one of the things I think Jeff had mentioned that is, I think one of the things that we all have and we don't give ourselves enough credit for is that innate instinct to survive. And with the support of my students, is because I teach part-time at Utica University in Utica, New York. With the support of my students, with the support of other peregrines on the path, I was gradually able to find my footing and make a decision to accept that my world was going to be the way it was and that my daughter was not going to be a part of it, but yet to commit to re-engage to a life of service in honor of and with my daughter, and to try to help as many peregrines along the way. For me, it's been 20 plus years. It's come March 1st, will be 21. I've kind of fully integrated her grief and her loss into who I am. I realize that I have many moments of joy, many moments of satisfaction. I am grateful for the people I have in my life. I also am aware that the sad moments and the days or moments of yearning are going to hit me, but I just accept that as part of the journey at this point. It's not anything I can outrun. When I was at 3.5 years, like with you, I wanted it to stop. I just didn't want it to, I just didn't want to go, I didn't want it to go on anymore. Now it's just something that I've accepted as part of the journey, and all the good, the yin and the yang has something to teach me. So I fully integrated it. I know where my daughter is. She's within me. She gives me signs of her presence regularly. It's not only her, but there's other spirit guides and ancestors that I've developed along the path that have also been part of that council. I look at her as being part of the universal oneness at this point. It's just not her. It's everybody that she's affiliated with on the other side. And, I've come to the realization that the relationship I have is going to be in spirit. I've accepted that, although there are days I wish she was physically here. And I tell people, or I tell peregrines early in the journey, there isn't anything I haven't explored about life, death, life after death. My own priorities, values, the process I went through to rebuild the foundation of who I am. So I'm willing to share that with anybody. You can pick my brains, Mark, anytime. I'm more than happy to share what has worked for me, to share what I've discovered, and whatever aligns or whatever resonates, great. Whatever doesn't, that's fine too. It's just
That goes for every listener out there as well, is that we do have people, myself included, who are professionals in the mental health field, who are working with and within the Lost Travelers Club. Dave is one of our council of peregrines, who is sort of one of those core voices who has some life under his belt and some death under his belt.
Yeah, a lot of death under my belt.
And a lot of wisdom to share and to assist other peregrines on the journey. I'm an internationally certified grief and survival counselor as well. And we offer these services at no charge through the Lost Travelers Club for members. So become a member of the Lost Travelers Club, and you can go to losttravelers.club and you can find us there. I want to get back to, thank you, Dave.
No, you're welcome.
Um, I want to get back to the process around these, what I call milestone days. I don't call them anniversaries because that's more celebratory to me somehow. And this is a bit heavier. It's more like a milestone. We do carry it in a different way, right? When the whole world is counting down and the beautiful ball in Times Square is dropping, right? And fireworks are going off all over the world and people are dancing and in black tie and all of that. How do you meet that? How do you sort of approach the season? Because it's all part of the from Thanksgiving through New Year's really is the season. Here in Spain, they don't have Thanksgiving, so it's really from Christmas through the Three Kings celebration in early January, um, where everyone's celebrating all the time. So how do you meet that party atmosphere with carrying your grief?
So a question for,
That's
I've-
for any
both
for
of
any
you.
of us to answer. Yep.
Yeah.
yeah, probably not very well. What I mean by that is I've found that my natural, I don't know, proclivity, but the way I tend to handle it is um uh just not to even think about it, like avoidance, I think.
Yeah.
And so I know everything that I've read and everything that I've heard tells me that that's not really the way to do it, right? Is it the buffaloes who go into the storm, head toward the storm because they'll get through it sooner, I think.
Right.
But I haven't found the discipline to do that. So I tend to just think about everything in the world other than Kyle. And I don't know if it's because I think it'll be too painful. I don't know, but I think that's the way I've tended to do it. I think I can't do that for 15 years or 20 years or
Right.
however long. Like I'm not going to be able to do that.
People
So
do. I don't know how they do
I
it.
don't know.
They do it. But you know what? It's right for now. And when
Mhm.
it's meant to be different, you'll find it. And sometimes that's with help, right?
Yeah.
Men are not good at asking for directions generally. And so this is why we're being public about our
Yeah.
grief journey here, is because you're not alone there, brother.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of people who do go 15, 20, 30 years, sometimes longer. And they shut down during these milestones. My question for you is, how does your family meet that in you as a man, as a father, as I hesitate to say in the 21st century head of household because it's more, hopefully equal now.
Mhm.
But as a head of your household,
Mhm.
and the responsibilities and expectations that carries, how does your family meet your grief journey during these tough parts of the year?
How do they meet my grief journey? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, are they receptive? Do they give you space? Do they celebrate and let you go into your man cave and do shred some AC/DC or whatever you need to do? I mean, are they receptive and supportive in that way? Not to,
Yeah, I think yes and no. I mean, they're I think they would be receptive. So my youngest son lives on his own now, not about 20 minutes from here. So So I don't see him every day or talk to him every day. I'm sure they would, what I think is that they would be, my wife would be probably receptive to whatever I needed to do or however I needed to do it.
Yeah.
If it came up, but I think, we, like Christmas Day when we had my youngest son over, we took a couple pictures and family pictures, and she had my wife hold up one of the pictures that we have of our oldest son. So it would be the four of us. Gosh, outside of that, I think we just really don't talk about, I mean, we talk about him some. Right? We go places or things that come up, we say, boy, Kyle would love that. Or
Yeah.
wherever we go, so we have cremated. So wherever we go, if it's a place where he would like to go, we spread his ashes
Beautiful.
and, have him cry.
Yeah.
And every once in a while I'll go down, or we're, hadn't been that long. And so we haven't really, one of the ways that we've dealt with it or not dealt with it, is haven't really gone through his stuff. It's all still down in his room. And we've done a few things down there, but
Yeah.
I think we're the avoidance family, maybe. We just haven't.
Well, let me tell
we
you
don't.
something. It's right because that's where you are, and there's good. That's where you are on your grief journey, not only as an individual, but your wife and your other son as well. They're all on their solitary grief journeys, right? There's a name for a sibling, peregrine. It's an IS, right? Which is a co-nestling, right? So it's that there's an identity there as well. And when you and your wife as peregrines are sharing this journey, you're also experiencing it in a solitary way too. She has her personal private pain. You have your personal private pain. There will be a time when you find either individually or together that you're ready to move forward. And there's no book, there's no counselor, there's no culture that will tell you that it must be now, that it's wrong to avoid. That's part of survival.
Yeah.
Is you get through the avoidance.
Mhm.
There are still times 15 years later for me that I go into my hibernation state and I avoid being around people. I don't go to holiday parties. I don't go to celebrations, concerts, things like that. I don't like being around crowds. It brings up too much for me, even 15 years later, right? There are people who can do that, people who do that. It's actually really helpful for them to get out and find some semblance of what they were and who they were before the event. But, and Dave knows this, I'm working on a book right now that equates the grief journey to quantum physics. That the moment that you became aware that Kyle had transitioned is like the Big Bang. Your universe explodes into chaos and you'll never be the same again, right? You're numb. You don't know how to feel anymore. It's like everything you knew is gone. And it's just explosion. You're numb. You're in, you can't hear anything. You can't see anything. You're in total shock, right? And then when that starts to calm down a little bit and you get back in touch with your emotions, that's the first dimension of mourning that you step into. When you start to evaluate, how do I feel about this? And that can happen in a few months. That can happen in a few years, like in your case. It feels to me like you're still in a mourning phase, right? And that's part of what that being a lost traveler is about, is sort of looking around you you're entering into a new dimension where now you're ready to talk about it with other people who've been there. Maybe not exactly where you are, but some similarities there. But they've been on the other side. And you're starting to assimilate tools for survival that you can't use the way I used, or Dave used, or Jeff, or John, because you're not us and you had a different experience. But you can take these tools that we're laying out and saying, I can synthesize this with a tool I've already got and create a unique tool for my grief journey, right? That's what this forum, this platform is all about. And so go easy on yourself. Don't feel like you have to rush. Don't feel like you have to. I still have things, boxes I haven't unpacked 15 years later. You're okay. And I feel fine about it. It's comforting to me to have some of his things, his treasures with me, right?
Yeah.
Here are his ashes. I have not, after 15 years, gotten to a place where I can release them out into nature or wherever. He's with me. I mean, it's not him.
Yeah.
He's here. But it's a great comfort to me to have a physical aspect of him with me. It's just comforting. Dave, do you anything you want to add or talk about your how you meet this time of year when the world is celebrating? And
For me, and I was just going back to something that you and Mark were alluding to. Sometimes avoidance is necessary for survival. Um, if there are things that you're not capable of doing in this year of your grief journey, you may find that you're more capable of doing them the next year, or doing them to a certain degree. For me, there were like, it took me 8 years to go through my daughter's funeral stuff. So there's really no time frame for any of this. It's just when we're ready, when we feel the nudge, and when we feel, I guess, emotionally, for lack of a better word, strong enough for, to do that. So just be wherever you need to be, and show grace to yourself. And don't look at linear time frames that are kind of randomly imposed by individuals in society who think that, we need to be happy after a prolonged, period of acceptable time of grieving, and then we move on with our life, which is a bunch of total horse crap anyway. But for me to get back to how I look at the holidays, I've never been much of a holiday guy, and this is even before Janine transitioned. The holidays took more of a pallor, a dark pallor to it after she transitioned, because we had a very honest talk, and I'd mentioned this on another podcast, about her meeting her own mortality around Christmas, saying that she wasn't sure she was going to be here for another Christmas. So for years, I looked at that as a further indictment of why I didn't like the holidays. And I never begrudged anybody the opportunity to celebrate, and I would never do that. I would not like my pain be an excuse to rain on somebody else's party. But I just had I think I just was very detached from it. Now I find myself more engaged in the holiday festivities. I find myself, but yet I balance that with a certain amount of detachment that I need to survive the holidays. And I'm okay with it. But certainly, regardless of what happened to me, I would never look at the holidays and think, well, I would never, and I guess, wish what had happened on me to happen to anybody else. And I would never look at somebody's family and say, why wasn't it them instead of me? Because I'll tell you something, I wouldn't wish whatever we went through with cancer on my worst enemy. And at that time, I knew who my worst enemy was.
Yeah.
So essentially, when I looked at celebrations, it was always a reminder of who I didn't have in my life. Now I look at it and I realize that the fact that my daughter is in me is a celebration every day, and I'm good with that. And so watching other people celebrate and be happy and watch the ball drop on New Year's or Christmas doesn't affect me anymore. I figure, hey, it may not be for me, but if it makes them happy, so be it. And I get some peace from being able to look at the holidays that way now.
It's beautiful. Well said. And there are a couple of things that you said that I thought were really, really good. Simple ideas, like the nudge. We all know what that feels like. Mark, you felt the nudge to jump into this pool today, right?
Yeah.
You felt the nudge. Where did that come from? Right? It meant that you were on some level ready. And it could also have been, to a degree, the Kyle that's alive in you saying, Dad, go find community now. Right? So I believe in the nudge. Cultivate the nudge. Become really sensitive to the nudge. Because if there's a day that you're washing dishes in the kitchen and you feel the nudge to go downstairs and open a box, trust it. It's not going to be easy because it's going to be like Pandora's box, opening up all kinds of memories and feelings. For me, and I can't tell you how to do it, I can tell you how I did it. I opened the box and I leaned into it. I leaned into my feelings. I leaned into my grief. Men, I believe, really need to learn that skill. That not to sublimate something that's trying to come up in us, but lean into it. Feel your feels, feel all of them. Sit down there and weep for an hour if you have to. If it's too hard, guess what? You can close the box and go back upstairs and meet it another day. Right? Only you know. Trust the nudge. The other thing that you said, Dave, that was really important part of this journey is detachment. There is something about healthy detachment that allows us to survive. It's the same impulse that that guy in Utah had to detach from his pain in order to saw his arm off when he got stuck in those rocks,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
It doesn't mean that you're detaching from Kyle or Janine or Cameron. It means that you're detaching so that you can survive the moment. You're detaching from the moment itself, right? And that opens you up to being able to feel through that moment. We need that. We need to connect as peregrines. This is a very, this experience opens us up. We're walking sense organs, right? We are sensitive to everything now. We're hyper sensitive. This is part of, I believe that many of us, I would dare say most of us, are walking around with PTSD after outliving our children. And I think it's very important. I talk about it a lot. I went and got diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. That's what opened me up to having a service dog, which was a game changer. And it also gave me tools to cope that I would not have had without an official diagnosis of PTSD. There's no stigma attached to it. It's about protecting your peace. It's about protecting your mental health. And this isn't just for you, Mark. Dave knows this. I know this. It's for everybody listening. That self-protection, that survival instinct is paramount to get through. And when you if you go to the website, there is a self-evaluation tool there where you can assess for your own self. It's like a self-reflection, a meditation. Yeah, I experienced this. I experienced that. I experienced A, B, and C, or not so much. Then it'll evaluate on the most superficial level. Yeah, you've probably got PTSD. Then that gives you permission to go and do something about it, right? I don't know if you've been through that process, but I found it to be very, very helpful in how I meet my grief journey. And in the tools that it's provided to me. So even if you don't go and pursue it, and only someone who is a professional mental health care worker can diagnose you. You can't diagnose yourself, but you can absolutely evaluate yourself. That can be a great service in this journey. And moving through that very thin membrane between the second and third dimension of grief, right? From mourning into grieving. Mourning is a passive phase and temporary. Allow it to be temporary. You can't do anything but mourn. That's why I say it's passive. You can just be in it until you're not. And you cross through that thin membrane into grieving. Grieving is permanent and grieving is active. And that's what the Lost Travelers Club is about. It's about channeling our grief into service, as Dave said. That was a huge, huge game changer for me. It brought me back to my sense of purpose. It reintroduced me to a whole new me that hadn't existed before, right? We have a completely new identity. And that's why I changed my name. I hyphenated Cameron's name with mine. You may have noticed that. That's to keep his name in the world, because when our kids transition, you don't hear their name much anymore, not even from family sometimes. And that hurts. That's hard. So now people call me Henry Cameron, and I hear it all the time. It's great. It's also to hyphenate his name is a link, the way that people sometimes when they marry will hyphenate their family names to show that this is your new identity. It's an eternal bond that we have, but it's also a mathematical equation. It's Henry minus Cameron. That's who I am now. Not in the spiritual sense, but in the physical sense. He's no longer physically here, but I know exactly where he is. That's why I avoid using the word loss, because he's not lost to me. He lives fully right here in me and through this work of service that I'm doing, that reconnected me to my purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where do you feel, because I've identified 12 dimensions of grief. So, these 5 stages to me are baloney. There's so much more nuance there and layers between the layers. That's why I call it quantum grief, is because it's unpredictable and there are so many layers to it. One of the things that when I'm working with a client, I will ask, and you're not a client, and I want you to, you perfectly welcome to say, I'd rather not go there. But if I may, I want to ask you if you have given any thought or imagination to what kind of griever you want to be. Like, what kind of a grief journey do you want to have from here forward, right? You've accepted what's happened, it seems.
Yeah.
Right? That's the big step. That's the big jump, is accepting that it happened and that there's no going back. Now the question becomes, what now?
Right.
From here forward, how do I want? And that can only come out of you. And it starts with your imagination. How do you imagine yourself wanting to progress? If you could choose, which I think you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. That's probably, where kind of my next step, I suppose, is figuring out what I don't want the next 20 years to just be wandering aimlessly and not caring about anything. So I think it is maybe figuring out what I do want it to be.
The easy list to make is what you don't want it to be.
Yeah.
And there's a very simple exercise that I want to offer you and anyone who's listening. If you're at that crossroads, because we've been there, we've all been there. Make the list of what you don't want it to be. Actually write it out on a piece of paper in your own handwriting. Then you own it, right? Because it's in your handwriting. It's your list. It's your paper. It's your pencil. You know exactly who it belongs to. And once you've made that list, it could be 5 things, it could be 10 things, it could be 100. But once you feel that you've finished that list of what you don't want the rest of your life to be. And this could be around grief. This could be around anything, right? Remember, you're a different person than you were before this happened. Life will never be the same as it was. So all bets are off. Imagine everything, but make the list of the things you don't want on the left side of the page. On the right side, across from each one of those, write the opposite of each of them. And there's your running list. It's a foundational list. It's not it's not written in blood or stone. You can always change it and adjust it. But there's your foundational list of what you do want. Tear the paper in half and get rid of the negative list, the list that you don't want. Burn it, eat it, swallow it, flush it, get it off the planet, because it doesn't matter. Because now you get to focus on what you do want. Another step that I like to encourage is to actually take that list and put it in like an Altoids box or some kind of little metal tin or something. Go out into nature and plant it in the earth, under a tree, under a bush, someplace that only you know where it is, and plant it like a seed. This is the list. And we disconnect from the earth sometimes when we're feeling lost. And we are very much a part of the earth and part of nature, right? I believe in grounding, taking your shoes off and walking on the earth itself. It's a huge charge. So when you've buried it, you're not burying it as you would a person or the shell of a person. You're burying it as planting a seed for your future. And every time you achieve one of those things that you have imagined you want your life to be, go dig it up, cross it off the list, and put it back in the earth. It's a very simple exercise, but man, let me tell you, it has been so profoundly helpful to me. And so I'm happy to share that with you and with anybody else who's at that crossroads of, I don't know what I want. It starts you on the path toward imagining. And please share that with your wife as well, and with your other son, because they're also on their individual journeys. They may be at a similar crossroads. There's very little attention paid to men's grief. There's very little attention paid to sibling grief as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important to hold that as his father. Right. Dave, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I don't have multiple kids. I can't really address that. But you not only have multiple kids, but you have a granddaughter as well to hold through her journey.
Yeah, I mean, my kids, I've got 2 sons. Janine was the middle child. They've pretty much integrated the loss of their sister into their being. They're both living very active, very full lives with their own families. And I know they honor her in their own way. My granddaughter is an interesting young lady. I mean, if you talk to her, you're talking to my daughter. And she's very much the epitome of my daughter, which in some way, from physical or human standpoint, would be a miracle, because she only knew my daughter for 10 months, and probably 3 to 4 of those months she was sick and really couldn't take care of her. So I figured about 6 good months. Or we could look at a sacred law explanation and say that a part of my daughter soul continues to live on in my granddaughter. And I really think that that's the case because there's so many mannerisms, so much that reminds me of her. It's like, and and that's something that I'm grateful for. But at the same time, when somebody said to me, well, your daughter left you a great gift. Well, yeah, she left me a granddaughter, but at the same time, she's not here. And my granddaughter is not the consolation prize. She's her own woman.
Right.
And but she just it is the older she gets, the more she looks and she acts like my daughter. And in that sense, it is a gift because I believe a part of my daughter's soul is living through her. Um, her father and my wife Sherry and I we filled in the blanks with Janine. And one of the more serendipitous moments that I had, and I wrote a blog about this, is where I sat down with Janine or with Brianna. We watched the DVD of my daughter's last Christmas, and where essentially Brianna was looking and seeing herself as an infant and watching her mother nurture her. And that was kind of a surreal moment sitting there with my granddaughter, watching moments from early birth and watching her, hear her mother's voice for the first time. So, um, I guess, and so they fully integrated. They're very much my sons have integrated their sisters lost into their being, and my granddaughter knows who her mother is because of her father and because of us. We've made Janine a part of my granddaughter's history. Um, and watching the video with her was I guess was the kind of cherry on top of the whipped cream.
Yeah.
And that's an experience I'll never forget. It
Was that
very
hard? Was that hard to do the first time that you pulled that tape out?
I had seen it before, and I think it was harder the first time I had seen it than it was the second time with my granddaughter.
Yeah.
The first time I had seen it was early, probably where Mark, 3.5 years where Mark is right now. And it was really like, so somebody like took it was just like somebody took like chalk and screeched it out of eat on its chalkboard. And it just was very uncomfortable watching that. But the second time around, I was like, this is pretty cool
Yeah.
because I got to see my daughter come alive again and watch my daughter experience that, their granddaughter experience that, and see her come alive as a result of watching that. So it was a very different experience for me the second time around.
It's kind of like when you plunge into a cold lake or something, and at first
Mhm.
it's like
Yeah.
scraping your soul. I mean, there's
Well,
something it's almost a burn
yep.
sensation. But then as you acclimate, your body starts to relax, your shoulders drop a little bit, and then you can get through it. So sometimes taking that first plunge, getting yourself to that point is the hardest part. But then when you do it and you allow yourself to acclimate to it, that makes that experience the next time you meet it, but also future experiences a little bit easier to assimilate.
And what also did watching it with Brianna, watching that DVD with Brianna changed some of the memories I had of her and my daughter's end of life chapter. And that put a different layer to it, which made it more tolerable for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And will make it more tolerable moving forward.
One thing, Dave, you and I have talked a lot about is the idea that came to me the realization that our kids are now our ancestors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Hold that thought. They are our blood relatives that preceded us. So they are our ancestors, and their DNA is in us as much as ours was in them.
mhm.
And the way that we reflect on our ancestors for wisdom, for comfort, for a sense of self, we can now, one of the little gifts that you can carry into the next year, Mark, is the realization that Kyle is now your ancestor. And that brings with it a certain degree of
Mhm.
hopefully comfort, but also empowerment to say, wow, all the good that he was is living in me and through me today and forever. Use that, chew on that, meditate on that, whatever you do, but just carry that little light into the next year. And I hope everyone listening also that same message, that light that lives in you, that is the light of your ancestors, right? There's the science of epigenetics. It's proven that we carry ancestral memory in our very DNA, in our genetic makeup,
Mhm.
right? And it's no different with our kids. They are living on as our ancestors live on within us, right?
Yep.
Well, can't believe it's already been an hour, but
Uh,
this is what happens. Time and space are an illusion as much as death is an illusion. So
Mhm.
again, I want to thank you, Mark, for that nudge and following the nudge that brought you here. And you're among friends, you're among brothers, fellow peregrines, and we hope you'll keep coming back. We do
Very
this
good.
every Sunday. Usually we record it on Sunday and I launch it on Tuesday, but as we did on Christmas Eve, I'm going to launch this one tonight because I know there are a lot of peregrines out there who need to hear some of the things we've been talking about as they're
Mhm.
moving into a new year, as the countdown is happening. So, um, I'm
Thank
going to
you. I appreciate
venture.
you having me.
Oh, anytime, anytime. And I'm going to venture to not say Happy New Year because I know what it feels like to not quite be able to accept that. Um, but I'll say, let this be a year of peace. Let this be a year of empowerment and enlightenment on your journey and of the knowing that you're not alone, that there are other brothers out here, other men who are experiencing grief in a very unique way that only men do. And I think that as we grow this, as we talk about this publicly, it effortlessly gives other men permission to show up and to be here for themselves and to let us be here for each other. If you go to losttravelers.club, you can find out all about the Lost Travelers Club. You can become a member. Membership is free. Make sure to subscribe, do all the things that the algorithms like, comment. If you have an exercise or something that you have found that has gotten you through the countdown, put it in the comments below and share with other men. You don't have to be in front of the camera in order to be helpful, right? So please show up as you can. And if you have any questions or if you're looking for counseling or support, please reach out. It doesn't have to be all the time. It could be just on the days that you need it. We're here and available. So again, thank you, Dave. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And thank you to Jeff and John. Sorry they had to cut out early. We were having some technical difficulties. I don't know what it was, solar flare or something, but at least we got through it.
Mhm.
And we will see everybody next week.
Very good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So long.